Well, it's finally here, the Nintendo Switch 2, and this is a very long time coming. I still remember back in 2023 where we all thought that that was going to be the final big year for the Nintendo Switch, just because of how many great games we got that year. And man, the actual waiting process of actually seeing footage of what the Nintendo Switch 2 would look like really killed a lot of people. I still remember back in January there were so many rumblings that were going to get announced that year, and everyone keeps getting taunted by the freaking marketing of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. Unironically, the perfect time for them to actually market that game. And the funniest thing too is that when they finally released the first trailer of it, it was on the same day of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. And man, that actual reveal trailer looking back was pretty cool to see. It wasn't as grandiose compared to the Nintendo Switch 1 trailer with all the live action stuff, but for what it is and what the Nintendo Switch 2 itself is trying to be, I think it does the job done. I especially love how it literally transforms into the Nintendo Switch 2. Really shows that this is a brand new upgraded console. As it's mostly tradition at this point for Nintendo to do a sequel kind of console. Like, we went from the NES to the SNES, we went from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Color, and then the Game Boy Advance. And then for more recent stuff, we had the Wii to Wii U and the DS to the 3DS. Although unlike those consoles, the name itself is also probably the most straightforward Nintendo has ever been. Which honestly I'm very fine with, and after what happened with the Wii U, I don't really blame them for being very straightforward. And after this reveal, we had to wait a few months until we get the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. And man, out of all their Nintendo Directs, this is probably one of my favorite ones because they revealed so many cool stuff here. New Mario Kart, new Donkey Kong, a freaking sequel to Kirby Air Ride. Everything was just great. Until we got the bill. Yeah, a lot of the stuff in Nintendo Direct was very cool, and it was very cool that we're actually with a Nintendo console that's about as range as the current gen stuff, but it came with a severe price. Quite literally, because the actual prices for the console itself and all of its games were ludicrously expensive for a lot of people. Like, people were already, like, begrudgingly accepting $70 price tags, like, it's a lot, but, whatever. I honestly would have preferred just like $60 as usual, but then they charged it freaking $80 for the new Mario Kart game? I still got it anyway because of course I did. But I wouldn't blame anyone at all who are extremely turned off at this game because of the price alone. And man, the actual waiting process for the Nintendo Switch 2 itself was complete chaos. For one, the actual pre-orders for the United States and Canada were delayed for a few weeks because of what's going on in real life. And two, when the actual pre-orders went live here, it was a complete meltdown for multiple stores. With the most baffling one being with Walmart, because not too long ago, it was announced that a lot of pre-orders, like thousands and thousands of them, were cancelled up front. Well, for me, I didn't actually pre-order online, I just instead went to my local GameStop. But even when I waited out there for about 4 hours early, there was still a pretty long line, and when the line actually started, I was there for 1 more hour. All I could say is that if you're pre-ordering something like this, I feel like it's better off for you to pre-order it in-store rather than just online. But that's all in the past because the console's finally out and I got it, and here's my thoughts on it. So for the actual pre-orders, I actually only ordered about 3 things, which was the Nintendo Switch 2 itself, a Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller, and of course Mario Kart World. And just like that, I spent about $615. Luckily, not all at once. One of the biggest perks about pre-ordering at GameStop is that they have a deposit thing. So basically, even though I did spend this much, how I actually pre-ordered it made it a bit more digestible because I basically put down like $100 for the console, and then next week I just paid a bit more and more until finally I paid off the rest. But enough rambling. So as for the console itself, I gotta say, when I first opened up the box, I was just very amazed just how big it is. Like, I never got the Nintendo Switch OLED, so I didn't really get to have like that bigger screen. So from my perspective, I haven't felt this big of a screen jump since like the 3DS to the 3DS XL. The new Joy-Cons are also very good as well. They feel a lot more comfortable in the hands, especially since they're a lot more bigger than the original ones. And they snap onto the console very well. So yeah, it's very good stuff. I especially like how this thing looks. Now granted, there's only so much you can do with a console that's literally just like a tablet, but it's a very nice looking, sleeker version of the Nintendo Switch. I even like how the Joy-Cons have the red and blue like the previous version, but now they're in the inside with the joystick rims. And that kickstand, my lord, it is a massive improvement with this little stick. So it's mostly pretty good stuff throughout. Now other than that, I also nabbed myself the aforementioned Pro Controller. And my lord, this is pretty early to say, but out of all the Nintendo controllers out there, this is probably going to be one of my favorites of all time. On surface level, it does just look like the original Pro Controller, but I don't know how to describe it, but actually using it and using the joysticks themselves feel very silky smooth. And the HD rumble in these controllers feel a lot more refined than the original. But that's enough about the physical stuff itself. As for the console itself and its menus and such, well, one of the big perks of getting the Nintendo Switch 2 is that you will immediately get a huge library of old Nintendo Switch games to play. They run a bit better on the Nintendo Switch 2, plus faster loading times. And the very first game I ever booted up on my Nintendo Switch 2 was Yoshi's Island. Yeah, so for a few days now I was having this little joke where the first game I ever booted up on my Nintendo Switch 2 will be Yoshi's Island. And well, I fulfilled my joke because I can officially say the first game I ever played on this console was Yoshi's Island. Now for some Nintendo Switch games, they actually had special updates for the Nintendo Switch 2. And so because this, games like Super Mario Odyssey run so much better, and now it's in full-on 4K, which is very cool to see. Like, I've never actually owned a console that could do 4K, so this is a very new thing for me. But other than that, another game that I tried to boot up on the console was Pokemon Violet, and my god, it feels like a completely different game now. Now, originally on the original Switch, I thought this game was just okay. Didn't think it was as bad as some people were saying it, but it was definitely not like my favorite Pokemon game. One of my biggest issues with the game was easily the performance because it did not run well at all. But jumping on to the Nintendo Switch 2, where it's in complete 60 FPS, it is a complete night and day experience. And as for stuff for the Nintendo Switch Online, well, starting with the Nintendo Switch 2, this is when they decided to add GameCube support. Now, I've gotta say, I kinda wish they had a bit more to a day one, like, I'm kinda surprised that they didn't add Super Mario Sunshine to this because that was the GameCube game. But at the very least, we finally do got The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker on the Nintendo Switch. Probably not the way people would probably want it, but hey, better than nothing. And then finally, the Nintendo Switch Classics got a bit of an update. For one, they added button mapping to this as well as the original version, which is very nice. I'm not really too big on some platformers where you have to press A and B. So this was basically godsend for me, especially playing through something like Super Mario 64, as my muscle memory is so fixed with the 3D All-Stars version. And other than that, exclusively for the Nintendo Switch version, they also include a CRT filter and also rewind. Very convenient whenever Donkey Kong 64 ever comes to Nintendo Switch 2. But anyway, so enough rambling, it's time to talk about the main meat and potatoes of this thing, the Nintendo Switch 2 games. Now upon launch, I was able to get about 5 of them. 3 of them physically, while 2 of them digitally. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about them in order from cheapest to most expensive. But anyway, so the first game I got was actually for free, which is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Switch 2 Edition. I was able to get this for free because it was available on the Nintendo Switch Online service. And my lord, after playing this game for about 8 years now, it is so uncanny playing through this game with a full 60 FPS. Like, Breath of the Wild alone is one of my favorite Zelda games of all time, so being able to play through this game with a digital save slot, while having this game look a lot better than before, I am very excited to play through this game once more. Doubly so with Tears of the Kingdom, but I'm probably going to be playing through that later this year. But anyway, so afterwards, I was able to pick up Deltarune, with Chapter 3 and 4 finally releasing. Now, I'm not really going to say too much about those. Since they're very new, I don't want to go full on spoiler related, but I gotta say, I really enjoyed my time with Chapter 3 and 4. Now, I kind of prefer Chapter 2 over Chapter 3, but honestly, after playing through Chapter 4, that one is easily my favorite chapter so far. And I cannot wait until 2030 to play for the rest of the game. But honestly, screw it, I'm just going to spoil the hell out of Deltarune right now. I mean, look at this section right here. Look how cool this area looks. And my lord, the plot twist of Sam's putting ketchup on a hot dog, that really blew me away, and I relate to that because I love putting ketchup on hot dogs. And then look at this part where Chris does this thing and then jumps to this part of the area. And I gotta say, the twist of Chris being a platypus, that was just kabooey, wow. But anyway, so the next game I picked up, and this was definitely a shoo-in for me, was Sonic X Shadow Generations. Now, out of all the Switch 2 games, this one definitely had a lot of criticism before released. For one, unlike the other Nintendo Switch 2 games, there is no Switch 2 edition in this game. You literally have to double dip to get this game on Nintendo Switch 2. Which honestly very sucks, because a lot of the other companies offered you these upgrade packs for like $10 or even for free. And also, and this is not really a Sonic thing, but more so like all the other third-party games, is that this is one of the games that includes one of those game keycard things. Which basically means that there's no game in the actual cartridge, instead it just gives you a special key to actually play the game. which honestly sucks because I mostly prefer going cartridges because it saves a lot of storage. But anyway, so as for the port itself, and honestly, after playing through this game dozens and dozens of hours on my Nintendo Switch, it's honestly very weird playing this at 60 FPS as well. Like, seriously though, the comparisons between this and the original version are night and day. Especially with the original generations, which runs at a beautiful 4K 60 FPS. This game was already one of the best platformers of the 2020s, and I'm very happy to get this on Nintendo Switch 2. And also, there's just something very funny of Sonic being one of the big launch title games. Like, platformers are usually the meat and butter for a lot of Nintendo players, so the idea of Sonic being the launch title platformer on arguably the most anticipated Nintendo console release ever, there's just something very funny about that. But other than that, I also picked up Cyberpunk. Now, I've got to say, I've never actually played through a CD Projekt Red game before, and I remember all the talk back in the day about Cyberpunk from all the highs and lows of this game. And I know this is a kind of weird game to talk about on this channel, but honestly, after playing through this game for about 3 hours now, I'm honestly very intrigued playing through this. For one, this is a really good show pleaser on what the Nintendo Switch 2 can do graphically. Now, I'm always going to prefer like the more cartoony aesthetics with stuff like Mario and Sonic, but for what this game is trying to do, I think it does a really good job, and it runs very good on Nintendo Switch 2. Which makes me very excited to see what kind of games that gets released on this console. Like, I would die to get the Resident Evil games on the Nintendo Switch 2. Like, back in the day, my most wanted Nintendo Switch port was freaking Resident Evil 7, and to see that might actually happen this time around with this Nintendo console, I am very excited to see what we would get for third party in the future. And then finally, we have arguably the biggest one of them all, Mario Kart World. Now, I'm going to be talking very brief about this one because I'm going to be making a dedicated video for this game alone. But after playing through this game for like 10 hours, I've got to say, even though there's things I do like and don't like about it, I think overall, Mario Kart World is a very good game. Do I think it's worth $80? Oh god, no. I even feel like 70 is a bit stretching it. But even looking beyond all the corporate stuff, I still think Mario Kart World is a very fun game and a very smart choice for a launch title. And that goes all the way back to the Nintendo Switch 2 itself. Would I say it's worth the price? This is a bit complicated to say. I would say probably with like the console itself, not everything, like no accessories, no games or anything, like the console itself. I'd say $450 is a decent enough price. Obviously, I would prefer something like $400 because I feel like that would be a bit better than just $450. But considering the fact that this is a console that's actually around the range of like the current gen stuff, I think it's fine, but honestly, I feel like you're better off just like holding it off for now. This is always a thing when it comes to like new console releases, as everyone is always in like a FOMO state. Like, hey, it's a shiny brand new console. Hey, the shiny new Mario Kart game. I gotta get it. I feel like it's best to be cautious about what you're trying to be getting. Now, obviously, I got this as well as the games day one, but that's mostly because I'm a very hardcore Nintendo guy. So I'm mostly going to be getting hundreds of hours out of this console alone. But if you're not really too big on Nintendo or not really too big on Mario Kart, I honestly say you should hold off on this console for now. I would say wait for a price shot, but considering that this is Nintendo and knowing them, they'll probably pull out the Nintendo cheerleaders when they announce that Mario Kart World is $70 for a limited time. And I know I sound a bit critical, but I gotta say, at the end of the day, from my personal opinion, I'm really enjoying the Nintendo Switch 2, as it's really amazing playing through these Nintendo games in high quality. So even if some of the games are a bit of a rough start, I honestly say it's gonna get better from here. But as for the next video, you know it's time. So next time we'll be here, we'll be talking about Mario Kart World, the latest Mario Kart game in the series. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye-bye!